Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Pete Dougherty here on this lovely Thursday afternoon in Green Bay. And by lovely, I mean rainy, but a good day to stay inside and take a look at the Packers roster, at how it is changing. Another change again today, Pete, one that wasn't too surprising. The Packers will not return Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That wasn't too much of a shock a couple of weeks ago, but after trading Davante Adams, started to become a possibility more. Instead, we learned today he is signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. After the Davante Adams trade, were you expecting MVS back, or was this sort of news that you thought would happen anyways this offseason?
You'll have to forgive me. I just have somebody knocking at my door and looking in, so I don't know who they are, so I'm trying to wave them off. So I don't know what's going on there.
Well, if you need to go answer the door, we could go over a little bit more news here while you go do that.
I think the person left. I don't know. I don't know if they were selling something. Somebody across the street, a dog came running to my yard, and the neighbor across the street got the little dog, and so I don't know if it was something related to that or not. I don't think so. I think it's probably somebody selling something. So anyway,
please don't do anything dangerous on air.
Yeah. So can you give some more news?
Yeah, absolutely. Go check the door.
There. Yeah, just a second.
So as we were saying, Marquez Valdes-Scantling has signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. It is a 3-year deal for, I believe, $130 million, but let me double check that, which, as we said, was not too much of a shock a month ago. This wouldn't have been a shock a month ago. We sort of expected MVS to sign with another team. 3-year, $30 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. But then Davante Adams was traded to the Las Vegas Raiders, and all of a sudden the Packers wide receiver core became much more empty, and MVS always provided that downfield threat as well. And so there was a little bit of an idea that he would be brought back. Pete, you're alive. We like to see that.
Yes, great news.
Always good news. Yeah.
The little old dog that was got escaped and going around in the rain last night has been reunited with its owner. So
we were just kind of going over the fact that MVS has signed a 3-year, $30 million deal with Kansas City. After the Davante Adams trade, almost expected the Packers to make a push for MVS, but then Kansas City, after trading Tyreek Hill, was in need of extra wide receivers as well. So my statement was, if this had happened a month ago, I wouldn't have been too shocked. But now today, I guess it makes sense for Kansas City, but I thought the Packers would push a little bit more to bring MVS back.
Yeah, me too. Knows the offense, knows the quarterback. He's had his inconsistency issues catching the ball, although I don't remember that being much of a problem last season. His value is as a guy who can stretch the defense and hit some big plays, and big plays win games. And so basically, you look at that deal he signed with the Chiefs, that's $18 million over the first 2 years. So that's, a $9 million average over the first 2 seasons. I think that's how you should look at most of these deals, as 2-year deals, these deals in free agency. So that's getting up there, but I don't know that it's outrageous. I thought maybe they'd push a little harder too, to be honest.
If that is no longer going to be the case, like you said, MVS was able to push the field, was a good deep field threat. At this point, are you now trying to replace Davante Adams and a deep field threat? Is there a quick and easy fix to do that?
No, there's not. I don't. Yeah, they need a speed guy, and there's no replacing Adams with one guy. I mean, that just ain't going to happen. They'd have to go out and trade for, Cooper Kupp or somebody to do that. So it's going to be by committee. It's going to be by drafting a couple of them. I would think. I'm sure. They have to pick one. I would think with their first 3 picks, at least one in there. Maybe very possibly with the first one. They might take 2 with the first 4. I was just talking with Ryan Wood about that. He thinks it's a given they will. I'm not ready to go that far because they have a lot of other needs too. But if they took 2 with the first 4, that wouldn't at all be a surprise. So they've got
Sorry, this comment from Michael is cracking me up.
Don Hudson, yeah.
Dig upable.
They so they just they need everything at receiver. They just need good players there, talented players there, without looking for maybe any specific trait other than the ability to get open and catch the ball.
A couple of people have mentioned this name. Randy mentioned it. I believe Chris mentioned it down here, and then Alex again. We're going to have to trade for a veteran wide receiver, right? DK, Brandon Cooks. Pete, I don't know about you, but I really like the DK Metcalf option because, well, one, you get DK Metcalf out of it. He's only 24. He has the unique combination of crazy, crazy fast. I think they clocked him at 24 miles an hour at one point when he chased down that interception. And just big. He can run over even a linebacker. Plus, the Seattle Seahawks are clearly in rebuild mode. It feels like if you're going to trade for him, this would be the year to do so. Do you think there's anything to that, or is that just people wishing for more than will actually happen?
I'm thinking the latter, but I don't know that. I haven't talked to anybody in the know, so I don't know if he's really actually available. I mean, the key word you said there is he's young. So even if the Seahawks are in somewhat of a rebuild mode, I mean, rebuilds happen fast in this league. So I have trouble seeing them parting with a really talented young player. Even if they bring in, a rookie quarterback, 2 years from now, they're going to still want Metcalf on that team, I would think. So they're not going to be just giving the guy away. I would think he'd be hard to get in the trade. I could be dead wrong, and they'll end up, that the deal wouldn't be that tough. But I'm thinking if the Seahawks aren't trading that guy for, they'd have to have a 1 and a 3 at least, I would guess, something like that. I don't know. It'd be great to add him if you're the Packers, but I have trouble seeing it happen.
Nothing in this offseason would surprise me anymore.
No, nothing in this league should ever surprise us, even though things do all the time.
Yeah. You mentioned what it would possibly take, possibly a 1 and a 3. And Massimiliano asked a very good question. The Dolphins gave up 5 picks for Hill. The Chiefs got 5 picks in return. Did the Packers come up short with Devontae, who Packers got a 1st and a 2nd for this year?
I don't think so. I've looked at it. It's not the number of picks, it's where they are. And the picks with Hill wasn't it a 1, a 3, and then like a 5, 6, and 7 or something like that? Like 3 of the picks, I can see you're probably looking it up there. 3 of the picks are late. If you look at the trade value charts, I think, maybe Kansas City did a little better. I think Hill's a little younger than Adams too, so that could be
28.
That's a factor. 2 years, that's a lot of years in the NFL. That's dog years, that's 14, right? So
yeah.
It's kind of how NFL years are. So I think they, I thought the Packers got better than I would have thought value for a guy on Adams who's about to turn 30. And if the Chiefs did better, it was only by a little bit.
The Chiefs got a 2022 first rounder, second rounder, fourth rounder, and a 2023 fourth rounder and sixth rounder.
Okay, so they got a 1 and a 2 this year. That's for Miami?
Yes. Who had the picks to give, thanks to San Francisco and a couple of other trades.
So I'm trying to think of who picks earlier, Miami or the Packers with their first pick from the Raiders. They're probably pretty close to each other. Weren't both teams right around the 500 mark, I think. So, I was thinking one of the 2s. I was thinking that if they got a 2, it was next year. So then the present value of a 2 this year is worth more than a 2 next year. But I know I read something where somebody added up the trade value chart, the trade value stuff, and Kansas City did better, but it wasn't all that much better. And I think probably what accounts for the difference. Just long story short, Massimiliano, is what it comes down to is Hill's 2 years younger. That's probably why they did a little better.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the second rounder this year being more important than the second rounder next year. That's something that our colleague Tom Silverstein mentioned in his piece today, which is a great piece on PackersNews.com. If you haven't read it yet, go read it, about what all went in to the trade for Devontae Adams to the Raiders. And he mentioned that the Raiders could have extended Adams an offer sheet. And if that had been the case, since he was a non-exclusive franchise taggee, the Packers would have received a first rounder this year and a first rounder next year. But that Bryant Gutekunst believed that a second rounder this year was more valuable than a first rounder next year.
Yeah, I think it also said, if I remember right, I think it said that the Raiders didn't appear like they didn't want to give up a 1 anyway.
Right.
And and the negotiations came down to the Raiders' final second to last offer was a 1 this year and a 2 next year, and Gutekunst insisted that the 2 be this year.
That's right.
And not next year, which is, there's probably 2 reasons for that. One is there's an automatic discount for a future pick. So if you're offered a 1 for next year, that's because you have to wait the year. You lose the value of that's a little lower. Just like with money, $10,000, you're better off getting it now than next year because you can do something with that money to make more money if you want. So you're losing, that's why present value is higher. But also knowing he was losing, one of the most important players on the team, one of their best guys on offense, really their second best guy on offense. He needs the picks now to start replenishing now, so that it can help the team this year. And then, let's say a receiver's drafted in the second round, he helped some this year. Next year, he'd be helping a lot. Instead, if they took the pick next year, then everything gets pushed back. All that development gets pushed back a year also.
And that's something that Michael kind of alluded to here in his comment. We have Rodgers likely 3 more years. What is the likelihood of a rookie wide receiver making an impact the first year? Before you answer that, I'm going to throw another question onto the back end of it. Randy says, I know you have Cobb, Lazard, and Tunyon. Where can Green Bay find their extra wide receiver? So I'm combining their questions for you, Pete.
Well,
do they have enough depth with what they currently have to build this wide receiver core through the draft? Or do they, if they're going to hit this championship window, have to go through free agency?
I would think they'd at least want to get a stopgap veteran for this season, just someone who's played. I mean, Cobb, only getting older, only getting a little less dynamic, only getting more injury prone. He's a small receiver. Tunyon coming off an ACL.
Won't even be available till week 6.
Yeah, I mean, and if actually that would be more like week 8 or 9 because he's not going to come off PUP and play that first week. It takes at least a 2-week ramp up to get back on the field. So if he starts the season on PUP, which I would think is at least a 50-50 thing, then you're talking the guy's not playing until week 9 or 10.
Depending on how the schedule falls, I mean, let's say they do what they normally do and stick the London game towards the end of October and then a bye week after it, we might not see Tunyon until November.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. And we saw this year with Bakhtiari that, coming back from the ACL surgeries as quickly or, on schedule, on time is not a given.
Mm-hmm. Chris Gime says Juwan Winfrey looked really good last year. He looked really good on special teams. I'd like to see him more there again this coming year.
Yeah, and he'll get it. That's a guy who will get his chance. And I was just noticing because Alan Dillon has a point about Metcalf, which might be the reason why maybe I think people think the Seahawks might be willing to trade him, is that he's due for a contract, and maybe the Seahawks don't want to see a problem there and don't want to pay him what he thinks he's going to get. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's also a really good point from Alan that if you get him, you're going to have to pay him big, so you better really like him. And so then maybe the trade value wouldn't be quite so high if it's for only one season. Although I would think if you would trade for him, you would want to redo the contract. Is he in I'm trying to remember what year he's in. Is he in year 3 or 4 now?
He's 24, so I would think but I feel like he's heading into his 4th year. I feel like he came out a year early.
I think that's right. And so if he's in the last year of his contract, he'd have to be in his 4th year because rookie contracts are 4 years.
He's heading into his 4th year, so the last year of his rookie contract. Yes.
So I would think you either make the deal and get him for like a 3rd or 4th rounder, which I find it hard to believe Seattle would do, or if you're trading 1+, you also have to do a contract extension with them before the trade goes through. So there's a lot of moving parts there too.
Mm-hmm. And then, as Russ says, Julio Jones still on the market as well. And I know we're about to wrap up here, but Julio Jones is an intriguing option because we look at him and we say he's not what he used to be. But Pete, I was looking at the numbers when compiling the list of possible Davante Adams replacements last year or last week. Sorry, Julio Jones, the past 2 years, not being what he used to be, is still one of the best statistical receivers in the league. So even at 33, I mean,
what was based on what I'm trying to remember, were his catches high, or was it his yards per catch was high?
I believe it was his yards per catch and like yards per game. He didn't play in all of the games, but when he did play, he was still a big play guy.
That's the thing that would really scare me about him if I were another team is, if you can get him cheap enough, then forge ahead. Yeah. But he's still probably command a pretty decent salary, I think, or, that's what he'd be looking for. And I would be just really worried about basically feeling like you end up flushing that money because he won't finish the season. He's been hurt a lot. When the Packers played them in the 2016 season championship game, he had a bad foot injury that whole season. Played great, played through it for the most part, and destroyed them in that game. But ever since then, he's had leg problems galore. And I would just be really concerned that you'd pay decent money to this guy, right, and in November he's hurt and he's done for the year, and it does you no good. It's just money you wasted.
Right. We're going to take 2 final questions here before we sign off for the day. Mas Milano asked, we're switching to defense real quick. Do you think Jaron Reed will significantly improve our D-line? I would chase Wyatt or Davis in the first round. You know who seemed the most excited about this signing, Pete? Was Kenny Clark.
I saw that. Significantly, I don't, that's a strong word to me, and I'm not sure about that because this guy is, I think, turning 30 this year. And I think he started dropping off last season, and that happens with these big guys, these D linemen, is they drop off fast a lot of times. I think he can definitely help them, and he'd be a nice rotational player and all of that. But I don't know that I don't think he's going to be. I probably shouldn't even say this. I don't think he's going to be this year's Devondre Campbell or anything like that. He can definitely help them. But I'm guessing he's at this point in his career, he's a rotational guy and a solid run stopper. Probably his pass rush has diminished quite a bit. So it was a nice signing, and it helps their D-line rotation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'd go any farther than that just at this point, but who knows? I mean, I'm sure I would have said something similar about Campbell too, and Rasul Douglas. I would have. Who even noticed when they brought in Rasul Douglas, right? Oh, they got this guy, plucked this guy off a practice squad, and look what he did for him.
Yeah, just a blurb, and then now he's one of the biggest offseason signings. Before we go to this last question, John asked about the fate of MVS. John, I don't know if you've seen the news today, but MVS is now a Kansas City Chief. He is no longer coming back to Green Bay. Last question here, and I think this is an interesting question from Atomic Helm because it relies largely on Aaron Rodgers. Who has a better chance at All-Pro next year, Davante Adams or Allen Lazard?
Oh, Allen Lazard's never going to be an All-Pro ever. I think I could safely say that. So Davante Adams.
Yeah, because he's special. He can do something, and you have to wonder, what about that chemistry with Derek Carr? They still worked together each offseason, so it would be it would seem evident that they would still have that chemistry. So, and then, just last one from Levi. Will Fuller should be signed already. That's a name to watch. Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks. I would keep an eye on both of those names as names that it seems like Goody would go for, guys that aren't necessarily the OBJ or Jarvis Landry on the list, but who could still come in and make an immediate impact. I actually really like Will Fuller.
Yeah, one thing, like Levi asked that question, anybody asking about these other guys, especially these guys who are, these guys have been in the league for 6 or 7 or 8 years now. When you're thinking about these guys, go to Pro Football Reference and look them up and see how many games they played the last 3 or 4 years, and see if they're missing games.
Right.
And if guys are missing a lot of games, the Packers will probably have less interest in them, depending on the price they have, the contract cost. But like even Fuller has had, his share of injury problems the last few years. And, the last thing teams want to do, especially a team in the Packers place, is bring in some guy and, have him play half the season, then get hurt, and then he's done for the year when it's foreseeable. So not saying they wouldn't sign Fuller, because I could see him doing it, but just something to keep in mind and something to look up. Like when you're thinking about all these guys, a guy pops in your head, go to profootballreference.com and look up his age and look up how many games he's played the last few seasons.
That's a fair point, because in 2021, Will Fuller played in 2 games.
Yeah, and I think it was either the year before that or in 2019 he missed a bunch. He missed the
2018.
Yeah, he missed the end of the season. He was out for by the time the playoffs rolled around, he was out.
Right. That's why I also don't think that Michael Thomas is going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'd have to look up his contract status and all that too. And I don't know what's going on with him and the Saints. If he still kind of seemed like he kind of wanted out of there for a while. I don't know if that's still going badly or not.
Yeah. Well, whatever does happen, we will be there to cover it for you all. Pete and Ryan will be down in Florida next week for the owners meeting. So stay tuned to Packers.com for full coverage from them as news comes out of there as well. Question, Pete.
I've got a call here I have to take.
Okay, go take it. We will see you later. Thank everyone for joining us. As I said, stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage as free agency news continues to come in, and be on the lookout tomorrow around lunchtime for a new episode of the Green 19 podcast. Thanks, guys.